This is our first lesson with Adobe Illustrator. We are going to cover the user interface, shapes, making complex shapes or characters out of shapes, and using the Shape Builder tool. When you first come to Adobe Illustrator, you'll get what's called the welcome screen, and it looks like this. You will have home, learn, you can have your work here. I have some documents here because these are the most recent documents. Then you have create new and open, that's on the left. Then up here, these are some template sizes, preset sizes based on the type of job that you are going to do. And if you can't find something that you want to work on here, then you would click more presets and you get a whole bunch of options. Up here, you have your saved ones, you have mobile sizes, web sizes, print sizes. For the most part in Illustrator, we will be working with print sizes. Before we open a new document, we're going to do some things in the preferences, and this is going to set up our Adobe Illustrator for all of the documents we open. So something that you should know is with preferences, if you have a document open and you change your preferences, it's only going to change the preferences for that document. If you don't have any documents open and you change your preferences, it changes it for the entire program. At the top is the menu bar. I want you to click on Edit and Preferences. Preferences is the last option at the bottom. And then just click on General. Some things that you should take note of, but that you don't have to change on here right now. You might want to keep your Show Tooltips checked. That will explain how to use each tool as you hover over it. Up here is your keyboard increment, and you can change the size, and this is when you use your arrow keys to move something. That's how far it will move. So if you need to move something just a little bit smaller, you come here and you change this number. Double click to isolate. If you double click on objects on your artboard, which we will get into that in a moment, sometimes you go into this isolation mode. If you're continually going into isolation mode and it's not what you're intending, you can come here and uncheck the double click to isolate. I uncheck until I need these, the scale corners and scale strokes. Most of the time I want my corners and my strokes to stay the same size when I make them bigger or smaller. Where we really want to go is the units, and on this window, it's the fourth one down. So click on units. We want to change our general to inches because we are used to working in inches. Leave everything else as points because type is measured in points. And strokes are measured in points, and strokes are the outlines of objects. Next, click on the user interface, and you can change how dark or how light you want your interface to be. If you change this, it gets a little bit darker. This is very light. This is the one I like. Choose the one that you like. And then you want to open documents as tabs. And just like when you're in a web browser like Google, you get little tabs with your documents or with your web pages. The same thing will happen. You'll get little tabs for your documents. The rest of these can stay as they are for now. So go ahead and click OK. Next, we're going to create a new document. I'm already in the letter size. If you're not here, go to Print, and then you're going to choose Letter. So over here, notice that we've got some other details. This is where you're going to name your file, and the name that you name your file is always going to be your first and last name dash the project name. I'm going to change this to inches, and then I can see it's 8.5 by 11 inches. I'm going to keep it this size, and I only want one artboard right now. And my color mode, it's CMYK color because we're in print, and we'll get more into that in a little bit. We want the raster effects to be high, 300 ppi. You can click on more settings to see what else is there. But for this case, we just need to create our document. So right here, click on Create. All right, so let's go over the user interface. Up here is your home button.
Next to your home button is your file menu.
Over here is a search for help. Search for help. These are your different workspaces, and we'll get into that in a little bit. Minimize your window, maximize your window, close Adobe Illustrator. Don't click this if you just want to close a document. You click this when you're done using Adobe Illustrator. This is the control bar. This bar will change as you select different tools on the toolbar. So this left-hand side is called your toolbar, and the control bar changes based on what tool you have selected. This gray part right here is called the scratch board.
You can draw on the scratch board, but anything on the scratch board will not print.
This is your artboard.
The artboard is where all of your artwork will go that you want printed.
On the right-hand side, we have panels, and you can change these, open up new ones, move them around. So let's go over how to do that. First, at the top, right next to the light bulb, I want you to click the workspace icon. And I want you to go through a couple of these and see what panels appear, and just play around with it. Okay, now that you're done playing, I'm going to tell you the windows that I like to have open. I like to have the character and the paragraph open. I like to have swatches, brushes. I like to have the color and the color guide. I like to have stroke, transparency, the align, the gradient, the appearance, graphic styles, layers, and my artboards. Those are all of my main panels that I have open. If you need a panel and it's not showing up over here, you're going to come up to the File menu and go Window, and then these are all of your panels. So Type has character, character styles, paragraph, paragraph styles, all kinds of things that deal with type. Now you can rearrange these any way that you want. If you grab the gray bar where there's no writing, you'll grab the entire panel. You can pull it off. If you want to put it back on in another spot, wherever that blue line is where it's going to go. So this one's going to create a new one in the middle. Let's say I want it to go back, or I want it to go under that one. Where that blue line is where your panel is going to go. So practice pulling off your panels and rearranging them. You can also just pull off one. So I'm going to pull this color guide. Again, I can pull it off. I could close it. I could grab it, and maybe I don't want it to be stuck with color. I want it to be the color guide because I want to see these at the same time. Okay, so a reminder that this X is going to close Adobe Illustrator. This X is going to close that document. I'm going to go over a couple of things on the toolbar next. So this is your toolbar. All the tools on here are called tools. This is it's the black arrow, it's the selection tool. White arrow selects points on a path. It is the direct selection tool. Magic wand, lasso, here's your pen tool. Now notice that little triangle in the corner. If you right click, you'll pop up new tools. So some tools have tools hidden underneath them. You can also click and hold, and those will pop up. We are going to be working with the shape tools today. I want you to right click on this, get all of those up, and then see that little end? I want you to click on that. You have just created a tear off toolbar. And if you close this, it's still on your toolbar. You can still access your shapes. This just makes it a little bit easier to access these tools if you're working with them a lot. All right, the first thing we're going to do is drag out a rectangle. So I just dragged out a rectangle. These circles, this is how I can curve in my ends or not. There is also a rounded corner rectangle. If you're consistently clicking on these, you can turn them off. If you're consistently clicking on these and you want to turn them off, you go View, Hide Corner Widget. Okay, so let's talk about this rectangle. Down here are your colors. This is your fill color, and this one is your stroke color. So right now, my rectangle has a fill color of white and a stroke color of black. If I want to change the color, I can either double click here and bring up the color picker, select a color and then click OK. Or I can go to my swatches panel where I have some colors built in and I can add to this. So I'm going to instead choose the purple color here. There we go. And I've changed it to purple. Now if I don't want a color in either the stroke or the fill, this box with the red line through it means none. So now I don't have a black stroke because I said none, but I have a purple fill. Now click on the rectangle tool. You might still already be in it, and just click on the board. So you can also put in a size. So let's say I want this to be 4 by 4. I know this is going to be 4 by 4 no matter what. Also, if you want a square and you're dragging out your rectangle, if you hold your Shift key, you'll get a square. Okay, everything is the same for the rounded rectangle tool. It's just that this has curves. While you're dragging out, if you press the arrow keys up or down, you will change the size of your rounded corner. So again, click, drag, continue to hold the key down, the mouse key down, the mouse button down, and use your up and down arrows to change the size of the curves of the corner. Again, if you want this to be a square, you're also going to hold Shift while you drag it out. The ellipse tool makes various different sizes of ellipses. If you want a perfect circle, hold your Shift key down. Okay, the next two tools work exactly the same as the rounded rectangle tool. If you want more sides to either the hexagon or, the polygon tool or the stars, you press the up and down arrow to get more or less sides. Now, the other thing that's cool is the polygon or the star tool. If you push down, you can do a triangle. So some of you are going to want perfect triangles. This is the way that you do it. So I'm doing the star tool, same thing. I'm using the up and down arrow keys to create more points on the star. I'm going to go over to my black arrow tool. Now, if I want to move something, I can do it in two ways. The black arrow tool will move these around, or I select it and use my arrow keys. Now let's go over this white arrow tool. These do the same thing. If I select it, it will move it around. I can use my arrow keys to move it. But this just opened up something different. See these blue boxes? The blue, there's actually a line around, that's the circle. That blue line is the path, and these boxes are points on the path. Now, I clicked off of the circle, and I'm going to come in and click again. So see, notice as I hover over the path area, it tells me a path, and then when I go over a box, it kind of lights it up and says anchor. I'm going to click that, and I'm going to drag it out. Now I've just created a different shape. So the white arrow tool is the direct selection tool because you can directly select these boxes and change the shape. Now the other thing that you have are these little handles. And if you move them, you can change the shape again. Pause this video and play around with these shapes. See what you can do. Make sure that you use the white arrow tool and that you're trying things with it. If you want to delete stuff off your artboard, all you have to do is select it and hit the delete key on your keyboard. If you want to select multiple objects, you can drag a rectangle. I'm going to delete all of these. Next, I'm going to go over how you can create a character using just shapes. I'm going to grab my tear off toolbar for my shapes. The first thing, I'm going to do a bunny, and I'm going to start with a rounded rectangle for the head. As I drag this shape out, I'm going to use the arrow keys to make those curves just a little bit more. Okay, so this shape is white with a black fill, is a white fill with a black stroke. I'm going to change to my move tool. I hit V on the keyboard, and I'm going to come over here and just use this lighter color that I have. I don't want a stroke, I just want a fill, so I'm going to get rid of that stroke. So the next thing, I'm going to take an ellipse and I'm going to make an ear. I want to make this just a little bit darker. So on my swatches panel, I'm actually going to go to my color guide and choose the next darker color, and that is still the same color. Yeah, this one I'm just going to make a little bit lighter. How's that? Okay, so now my ear is positioned on top of my head, but I don't want it to be, I want it to be positioned behind my head. So over here, I'm going to come to the layers panel. If this layer is like this and you don't see the stuff below it, you're going to click this triangle. That means it's a drop down arrow. And this is the ear and this is the head. Something else I want you to notice is whatever object you have selected is going to have a blue square next to it in the layers panel. I am going to grab this layer in its own, in the blank area, and drag it below the head. See where that blue line is? That means it's going to go below the head shape. So your layers panel is where you adjust the order of your items on the artboard. Now I can drag out another one of these using the ellipse tool, but the easiest way to make a copy of this is to right click, go transform. I'm going to do the inner ear, so I want it to be a little bit smaller. So I'm going to click on scale, and I'm going to, so with this tool, 100% is the size. Anything above 100% is bigger. Anything below 100% is smaller. I'm going to go 70%. If I click OK, it will change the size of this shape, but I want to copy. So I'm going to click copy, and it made it a little bit smaller. I'm going to change this color. So I think I'll choose this light color right here. And that's a little bit smaller. That looks fantastic. The great thing is it put this one also behind the head shape. Now I'm going to select these two ears. I'm going to hold my Alt key down and I'm going to drag over so that I get a copy. And actually, I'm going to change. I don't need the inside ear yet because I'm going to change the way this looks. I'm going to go to my white arrow, click off of it, and then up here, I just want this point, this anchor, and I'm going to drag sideways a little bit. And I think I'll just grab the handle and adjust it to how I want it to look. I'm going to go back to my black arrow tool. I click the V on the keyboard, select this ear, and I'm going to go through the same transform that I just did. I'm going to right click on it, transform, scale. I want it to be 70%. It's already in there, and then click copy. I'm going to change this color to that light pink color, and then I'm just going to move this over. I'm going to use my arrow keys. There, that looks pretty good. I might actually come in and change this because I want it to be over the blue part. I'm going to go back to my white arrow key, and I'm going to click on this path inside. There it is. And I'm just going to pull this out a little bit. You can also use your arrow keys to move them in and out. I moved it over to the left just a little bit. Okay, that looks pretty good. I love those ears. Next, I'm going to do eyes. And how I like to do eyes is I like to start with the back piece first and then move towards the pupil. So I'm going to do, I want this to be white. So I'm going to change that to white. And then I'm going to drag out a circle. I'm now going to unselect that. And then I'm going to take the circle tool, the ellipse tool again, but I'm going to do black. I'm not making a copy because in my case, I want the people to be slightly different, not quite the same shape. I'm going to go back to the move tool, the black arrow, make that just a little bit bigger. And then I'm going to take a rounded rectangle and I just want to go with white. I'm using the arrow keys to change the curves. Yeah, that looks, it's going to be tiny and it's a little, there we go. Just zoom in. I use Control Plus to zoom in, and then I'm just going to move this first and then rotate it a bit. I think I want it to be skinnier. So Control Plus and Control Minus is what zooms you in and out. Okay, that looks good. Now I'm going to select all three of these. I'm shift clicking on each one because I just want these three and I don't want the head. I am going to right click, transform, and this time I'm going to do reflect. And again, I want it to basically look at the other eye, and I'm going to choose copy and then drag them over. Mine's going to be a little derpy, so I'm going to make it a little bit bigger. I'm holding down my shift key while I make this bigger because I want it to stay. I don't want it, if I don't hold my shift key, it will do something like that. Actually, I kind of like that. Just move that over. I'm going to make my bunny smile. I'm going to use the ellipse key and drag out a thin ellipse. I'm going to zoom in a little bit so I can see that middle line. I'm going to switch to my white arrow key. It's A on the keyboard. And I'm just going to drag this down and I'm going to drag this down. Smile, or he could be frowning. Oh. Whoa. I'm going to do Control Z to undo that. I liked more of the derpy smile. Actually like that. I can make this whatever color I want. I kind of like that light pink color I'm using. I guess maybe it's purple. I think I grabbed a different color. I want it to be the same color as the ears. So I'm going to use the eyedropper tool. That's I on the keyboard and click on that. Yeah, it's a slightly different color. Just going to bring this one. I like that. Okay, I'm going to use a triangle for a nose. So I'm going to grab the polygon tool, drag it out. While I'm still holding the mouse key down, I'm going to use the down arrows to create a triangle. And I think I'm going to make this black. Okay, now for the body, I'm going to zoom out a little bit by going Control Minus. I am going to make kind of a pear shape. So I am going to do a big circle. Actually might make that a little bit bigger. I'm going to now change to my black arrow tool by pressing V, and then I'm just going to make this a little bit bigger. Switch to my white arrow key, A on the keyboard. I'm going to select this top one, and this is the shape I want. Now, I don't want that shape to come up over the head. I want it to be behind. So as you add objects to your artboard, they go in your layer order at the top. If you don't want it at the top, you just have to drag it. So I'm going to drag my body shape all the way to the end. Let's make this that blue color. That's good. I want these to kind of go in a little bit. So I still have my white arrow tool. I'm going to click on this. drag these handles. Now I'm going to add some feet, and I think I'm going to use ovals. I'm going to move to my black arrow tool. All right, so I'm going to create a new color swatch because I want it to be a little bit darker and make it look like the body is shadowing this. So I'm going to click on swatches. I'm going to click those 3 lines and I'm going to go new color swatch. And then I'm going to hold down the shift key and drag one of these over. And it should drag them all at the same time. I'm going to click OK. That went quite a bit darker. And then I'm just going to move this down below the body shape. I'm going to double click this color. Now that I have the color, I can click the preview. And so now I can hold my shift key down again and go back and get just a slightly lighter shade. That's much better. It's a little bit darker. It's not so much darker. I'm going to copy the shape. I'm going to click on it, hold Alt and drag and bring it over to the other side. The last thing I'm going to do is add a little bunny tail. And I think that I'm going to use the star shape, drag it out and go up and just create a bunch of points so that it kind of looks puffy. I think I've maxed out the number of points I can have. Okay, and I want this to be behind. I'm going to drag it to the end. So I have just created my first character using shapes. What you're going to do is on your artboard, you're going to delete this or move it off to the side, and then you're going to create a different character. It cannot be a bunny. It has to be some other animal. Okay? So on one page, you're going to create a new character and fill that page with your character.